Computers can calculate at the speed of light. They can store and process enough information to do our banking and pay our bills.
2, 1.
They can fly our most sophisticated spacecraft or take us on flights of fancy. Computers can flex robot muscles and literally tell the time.
Attention, please. It's now 2:55 p.m. Please hurry.
Hello, I'm Steve Gandell. Computers are all around us these days. Even this television program is being controlled by a computer. At the appropriate time, it will roll a videotape, interrupt this report, and show you a commercial. But this computer, like most computers, only does what it's told, what it's programmed to do. I say most computers because now a few select machines are being endowed with an artificial intelligence. They're being given the ability to understand their tasks, to think about what they're doing, to appreciate their assignments. What's more, they don't need a special computer language to communicate. They can converse in English, or Spanish or Chinese for that matter. And think about it. A computer with those abilities could become a teacher, a government worker. It could even write the news. Tonight, we'll meet a computer that reads the storylines from soap operas. A computer that's going to medical school in Pittsburgh. And we'll see the first attempts to link intelligent computers to robots and bring science fiction to life. But first, the computer here says it's time for that commercial. The Human Factor, an Eyewitness News special report. We'll be right back. This is the campus of Yale University in New Haven, Connecticut. Behind the traditional facade of these ivy-covered walls, some of the most unusual learning is being done not by students, but by computers. Here at Yale, a computer program named Boris is reading and understanding stories about complex human emotions and interrelations. Like the story of George. When a waitress spills a Coke on him at a restaurant, he angrily stomps home, only to find his wife with another man. A divorce suit follows, but George's friend, an attorney, loses the case and saddles George with a lot of alimony, plus a big lawyer's fee to boot. Boris understands these complex human interactions. The computer even knows what a spilled Coke is. With two screens flashing away simultaneously, Boris absorbs and processes the information. We know because Boris can answer questions about the stories it reads.
It can answer why questions like why did he go home? Because he wanted to change his clothes. Questions regarding emotional states. How did the waitress feel? She was very embarrassed.
After spilling the Coke.
After spilling the Coke. Or how did he feel at court? He was very upset that he'd lost.
Clever, yes. But is it really thinking, or just a lot of fancy calculations?
Well, that's really not a yes or no question. You know, it isn't that I feel that that machine is really warm and cuddly inside. It isn't. Or that it really has some kind of humanness inside. It doesn't. But it may be doing the same things that you do when you think. And the difference is that you don't denigrate them by saying they're just mechanistic or calculations. And maybe they are just mechanistic and calculations.
To try to understand the complexities of artificial intelligence, we came here to the University of Maryland and watched a computer sort out a sentence about a man eating peaches. Man eating peaches? The computer knows it's not a monster fruit. At the same time, the computer knows a similar phrase, man eating tiger, is not a person enjoying an exotic dish. To do this, the computer must be more than an electronic dictionary. It must know something about the world to sort out the correct use of even simple words.
We sat down and we came up with about 55 distinct uses of the word take. John took Mary for all she was worth. John took 5. John took time out. John took it for granted. So it's a matter of a lot of programming effort, a lot of people working hard to get the knowledge in, but we understand how to put the knowledge in.
Armed with this new ability to understand, some computers have begun to study medicine.
I had a headache that morning, early that morning.
But at the time the stroke started?
Stroke started, I didn't have the headache.
All right. I'm going to put that in here. Let's see what the next question is now.
In Baltimore, while Dr. Tom Price examines the patient, he turns to a consultant to help develop his diagnosis. His consultant is an electronic expert, a computer. But more than just a glorified reference book, this computer is intelligent. When Dr. Price asks the computer a question, it doesn't give him a list of all possible answers. It thinks the problem through and gives him the answer most appropriate for the particular patient. And the computer never answers with a trite, "that does not compute." If there's something the computer doesn't know, it asks.
Do doctors really need this?
The idea is that there's just so much information, that you get in medical school, 4 years of training, and 3 years later of residency and so forth. The idea is no one can keep all that in their mind. And so in a sense, this is like an extended memory for the physician.
The computer programs still need work, but the experts say the day is coming when your doctor's computer will do more than send out his bill. Well, before you start feeling inferior to a computer, remember they can't walk and chew gum at the same time. It turns out movement and sensory capability, the physical properties, are more difficult to duplicate. A computer that just sits there is smart enough to go to medical school. But a computer that tries to move around is stuck back in kindergarten. Except watch out, it's about to graduate to first grade. This robot can find and follow objects on a table. It can separate the cubes from the cylinders and sort them accordingly in separate rows. It takes 4 powerful computers working in tandem for the robot to think and feel and see. Playing with blocks stretches a robot's intellect to the limit.
The things that people think are very simple tend to be very difficult. Just looking at the desk and seeing a telephone is an enormously complicated task. And the ability to reach to a point and reliably grasp an object and pick it up is something that takes a child a year to learn. And if it takes something as complicated as a human child a year to learn it, then we should not be surprised that it takes a while and a lot of struggle to build a machine with that same sort of capabilities.
At the University of Maryland, teaching a computer to see involves no more than a television camera. But teaching a computer to understand what it sees is a complex process. The computer must first learn to separate individual objects from the background. Then, if it can match what it finds with patterns stored in its memory, the computer will recognize what it sees. At Westinghouse Research and Development Center in Pittsburgh, a prototype vision program arranges objects on an assembly line, turning them all in the same direction for the blind robots to handle. In Danbury, Connecticut, Unimation, which bills itself as the world's largest producer and designer of industrial robots, also has a rudimentary vision program unveiled just this month in Japan for spot welding jobs. Joseph Engelberger, president of Unimation, says it's just a crude beginning for robots that can see.
We can right now look at any individual object on a flat surface. And so we'll recognize where it is in any orientation as well as what it is. But if I take 2 of them, put one over the top, say, I don't know what that is. And I would think that 4 or 5 years we'll have it.
In even less time, Engelberger expects to have a robot in his office modeled after this prototype that can serve coffee to his guests and clean up when it's through. On a larger scale, James Albus expects robots to take a larger role on assembly lines in the next 10 or 15 years. By the 90s, they'll be involved in construction work, shipbuilding, bricklaying, steel work. And beyond that, expect to see robots working on their own.
Probably before the turn of the century, we'll see a large number of totally automatic factories. Robots with machine tools and computers supervising the system can operate not 100% without human beings, but pretty close.
Next, a talk with the experts, including the man called the father of artificial intelligence. The human factor will continue in a moment. Trying to get you some flags. There are some inherent limitations to what even the brightest computer can do. It doesn't have access to all the information a person has. It doesn't read trade magazines or go to dinner parties. It doesn't make friends. But intelligent computers are moving machines into areas of automation never thought possible before, including not just the assembly line, but automating management. This computer will work like a foreman's assistant. Being programmed at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh for use by Westinghouse in North Carolina, it will help schedule the hundreds of people and machines and thousands of parts and orders needed to make a factory run smoothly.
The complexities of scheduling are just mind-boggling. You know, it's to give you a feel for this, I don't know if you've ever been involved in a wedding, but that is a manufacturing plant has the same problem every day, getting 500 guests there, making sure that the cake is there, the band is there, the room is vacant, you know, the groom is there, all those kind of problems. It's very, very harassing, but a typical manufacturing manager has this, he has this daily.
Mark Fox, the scientist programming the computer, believes an intelligent machine will be able to handle this complex scheduling, even though he says it's almost an impossible job for people.
They don't do it optimally. Nobody does it optimally. It's not even clear that they do it satisfactorily. All they know is that they do it, and the level of competence they provide is just the level of competence that is being provided for them. And it's not unknown for large number of orders to be shipped late. And when you say shipped late, it could be on the order of weeks, months, or years. I mean, I have walked into factories where orders have been lost and found under chairs 2 years later.
Now, is that harder or easier for a computer to do?
Hopefully it'll be easier for a computer to do. And the only reason it's easier is that the computer can focus all its energies on that one task.
Mark Fox believes that by the middle of next year, intelligent computers will be in place, helping to schedule job shops and factories. And that within the next year and a half, computers will be doing a better job than people. He says within the next 2 or 3 years, computers will begin to answer what-if questions. What if we hire so-and-so? What if we do this to our production schedule? So computers will help improve the companies they work for. Does this mean intelligent computers and their counterparts, intelligent robots, will put people out of work and increase unemployment?
There's no question that robots are going to displace people. However, the nice thing about it is the robot does enter the workforce gently. In other words, we have not a case where any person could say, that machine took my job. There's many jobs that the robots are never going to be able to do, and that's what people should be trained to do.
What?
Taking care of robots, for example. No better job. Job enrichment have, say, 5 robots under 1 guy. Now, he's got a beautiful job because in the morning he doesn't know whether he'll open up a paperback book or be busy as hell.
Are we going to see a new level of automation?
I think that's inevitable. I mean, there will come a time where people will refer to the period we're in now as the 3rd Industrial Revolution or 4th or whatever we're up to. I think there will be certainly a tremendous amount of changing in the job marketplace because of computers. But I think people focus in the wrong direction on these things. What the company is replacing is a person who are making products that are replacing people that don't exist. For example, all right, you've got somebody, you run a big company, and you would like somebody who knows about the personal history and background of every single employee. But you don't have that person because that information is overwhelming. We are talking about building machines that will enable this massive information to be accessible via the English language to this president of the company or to the management or whatever. We're not replacing human beings. There isn't a human being who can do any of those things.
Although the tool here at Yale is computers, and the means is educating them, programming them to learn and think. The objective here is not better, smarter computers at all. The goal here is to learn more about people.
Essentially, we're doing the same thing that Aristotle was doing, all right? But we have a lot better equipment. What we're doing is we're trying to find out what goes on in the mind. What happens when somebody asks you a question and you compose an answer? How did you think up the answer? How did you know what he was saying to you? How do you compose the words? How do you compose the thoughts? And these are questions that have intrigued man for as long as man has been able to think. And we don't have good answers to them. Now, what's the relevance of computers? The relevance of computers is as you start to build an idea of how it might work, you get overwhelmed with the complexity of it. So one way we have of doing that is by writing down essentially on pencil and paper, this is how I think the whole process works, putting that on a machine, in a language a machine can understand, and seeing if the machine can actually do what we laid out for it to do. That is, can it answer the question? And if it can, well, then we may have a good theory of how people work.
Still, one apparent difference between computers and people is computers don't get bored or distracted. They don't forget or have to leave their lessons to go to the bathroom.
It's true they don't have to go to the bathroom when they don't decide they have something better to do. But imagine a computer that sits and read the newspaper, which ours do, that never forgets. Now you ask it a question. Its memory is overloaded with junk. I mean, try reading the newspaper and memorizing every single story in it for a week. You wouldn't be able to think of anything else. And the machines won't either. So what we have to do is to teach computers to learn how to forget. The trade-offs work the same way. The reason a person gets bored is he wants to concentrate his resources on the things that he cares about. If you don't make that trade-off with a machine, it'll spend a lot more time doing things you don't want it to do.
Your description is very anthropomorphic. How does a computer get excited? And what's really happening?
No, its lights don't start blinking. Right? The way a computer gets excited is by paying attention to one thing and not another.
In fairness, we should tell you some respected experts in the field don't believe computers will ever attain the full range of understanding characteristic of the human mind. In fairness, we should also tell you some experts think we're almost there now. At Carnegie Mellon University, we spoke to Nobel Prize laureate Herbert Simon, the father of the artificial intelligence field.
We think we can go a long way toward simulating what the human being is holding in his head, including what it means to have the information for a mental picture. That picture was drawn by the computer. Computer was told there's a man standing on a ladder. It was told how long the ladder was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The computer built up an internal structure in its memory and used that internal structure to build the picture which it then displayed on the CRT.
But that's not to say that computers have any consciousness, well, they have an understanding of what they're doing and that they can solve intellectual problems, but it doesn't really mean anything to a computer intrinsically, does it?
Well, those are hard terms to define. I don't think that anyone has written programs which could reasonably be interpreted as computer consciousness. Consciousness involves having some kind of a model of the situation that includes a model of yourself. And I don't think that's been done. But I don't know whether we'll know whether computers are conscious. I know why I'm conscious, because I'm aware of it. The only way I know you're conscious is that you tell me you are and you behave the way that people behave when they're conscious. If a computer were behaving that way, I'd have a hard time deciding the question of whether I should call it conscious or not.
Professor Simon not only believes computers can be intelligent, he says they can also be creative.
Creativity involves the same basic processes that any hard thinking involves. We have a program that one of my colleagues, Pat Langley, was the principal developer of, called Bacon. If you give that program the kind of data that Kepler had about the planets circulating around the sun, that program discovers Kepler's third law. Now, if a human being did that, a kid did that, today, even though this is well known, but he hadn't read it in a book somewhere, he'd say, gee, this kid is pretty creative. He's going to do something. I don't know why we should deny that word to the computer.
What's the limit?
Well, I guess I don't really see limits. I think the limits are limits on our ingenuity in pushing the technology forward. And I don't see it primarily as a threat. I see it primarily as one of the important means that we have in our world today for increasing human productivity. Just as mechanisms, machinery increased our physical productivity, the computer can increase our mental productivity.
There is one advantage an intelligent computer will hold over a person. A human being has to be trained individually, an expensive and time-consuming process, while a computer's knowledge can be duplicated as easily as copying a tape recording.
Cloned might be a good word to use there. That's true, and there are a lot of legal issues about disseminating knowledge, who's responsible for what program. In effect, people are putting pieces of their own brains, or the knowledge contained in their brains, in transmittable form in a way that has never been done before. Artificial intelligence is the art of putting yourself out of business, because what once appeared mysterious and intelligent no longer does when you understand how it works.
The human factor, machines that can think. Some final thoughts in a moment.
I didn't ask you to turn on the thermostat.
As long as computers have crossed the threshold into the realm of science fiction, we should ask, how far will they go? Will computers develop minds of their own? Can they get out of control?
It's possible to have a computer have a set of goals and have it, if it has one goal, it will have to learn how to be able to create sub-goals along the way that it needs to get its major goal.